Hello there, and welcome to our channel, where curiosity gets cozy and science drifts through the quiet edges of imagination. Tonight, we're going to wander a little further than usual, not just through the forests of history or the galaxies of physics, but somewhere in between, a place where memory and mystery meet, and where the story of humanity might not begin quite where we think it does. Because tonight's question isn't about where we're going, but who might have gone before us. What if the first civilization didn't vanish into ruins or myths, but simply left? What if, long before the first pyramids, before fire and writing in cities, someone else looked up at the same night sky and decided to leave Earth behind? Before we go searching for them, I'd love to know something small. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Maybe you're somewhere quiet where the hum of the evening feels almost ancient. Maybe you're in a city wrapped in electric light instead of starlight. Either way, right now this moment belongs to you. And so does the question that's about to unfold. And if you find comfort in this kind of wondering, if the idea of drifting gently through impossible thoughts helps you rest, I'd be so grateful if you gave this space a little like or maybe subscribed so that more curious minds might find their way here too. Now, settle in, slow your thoughts. Let's take our time with this one. Because the story of a civilization that left Earth isn't a story of aliens visiting us. It's the quieter, stranger possibility that we were the ones who once left. When we think about the beginning of humanity, we picture the familiar milestones. Firelight flickering in caves, stone tools clinking against rock, footprints pressed into the mud of ancient riverbanks. But imagine if those beginnings were only the second act. Imagine if, long before that, there was another rise one so distant, it slipped entirely out of the record of our species. Not a mythical Atlantis, or a lost golden age in the usual sense, but a truly ancient people who reached the limits of this world and chose to step beyond it. It's a strange thought because we measure civilization by what remains. Ruins, pottery, language carved in stone. Yet, if a civilization reached the point of leaving Earth, what remains would be nothing at all. They would take their knowledge with them, their tools, their art, their sky maps, leaving behind only the whisper of absence. The geological clock would turn. Ice would come and go. Continents would shift. And what they built, if anything at all was left, would crumble to dust or sink beneath the sea. If they left early enough, even the crust of the planet itself would have rewritten their story. Sometimes when archaeologists unearth something that seems too advanced for its supposed time, people like to imagine forgotten empires or alien influence. But what if those flashes of impossibility, the polished metal spheres found in ancient rock layers, the unexplained patterns that predate known history, were simply debris from an earlier chapter of us? A civilization so far removed from ours that it doesn't appear in any myth because it predates even myth-making itself? If that sounds implausible, it's worth remembering how much of Earth's history we simply don't know. Homo sapiens have existed for at least 300,000 years, perhaps more. Not with rockets, not necessarily. Our concept of space travel is limited by our own technologies. We think in terms of combustion and metal and heat, but an earlier civilization might have discovered propulsion methods that use natural forces, electromagnetic fields, gravity manipulation, or something more subtle. Still, they might have understood how to fold space rather than cross it. To us, that sounds like science fiction. But so would electricity to a medieval farmer or antibiotics to an ancient healer. Every age has its magic, and every magic eventually becomes mundane. And maybe they didn't go far. The moon, after all, is an ancient companion close enough to see, distant enough to vanish into. It's airless, silent, and perfectly preserved. A civilization that left Earth 100,000 years ago could have built something there. A base or an archive untouched by erosion or time. Modern exploration of the moon has only scratched the surface, and much of it remains unexplored. If anything were left, it could still be waiting there in the dust, buried beneath the slow rain of micrometeorites. The same could be said for Mars. Its dried riverbeds, its hints of ancient water, its magnetic anomalies, all invite the same question. We look for signs of microbial life, but perhaps we should also look for signs of migration. If a species leaves its home world, it might not leave it completely. It might scatter like seeds, some staying, some venturing outward. And in that scattering, memory begins to fade. The idea that we might be the descendants of such a people is as wild as it sounds. Evolution doesn't erase identity overnight. If even a small group stayed behind, stranded or choosing to remain, their descendants might have forgotten their origins after only a few thousand years. Without writing, without machines, memory becomes myth. Myths turn to religion, religion to folklore, and folklore to silence. Perhaps our oldest stories of beings who came from the sky aren't about extraterrestrials visiting us, but ancestors leaving, returning, or being remembered imperfectly through time. Some of the world's most enduring myths, from the Sumerians' tales of skyborn gods to the Hopi legends of people who traveled through worlds, share strange similarities. They speak of cycles of creation and destruction, of knowledge given and taken away, of beings who ascend or descend from the heavens. It could be coincidence. It could be universal human storytelling. Or it could be the fading echo of something once real. If we follow that echo, it leads us to a deeper question. Why would a civilization leave at all? Survival? Perhaps the end of an ice age or a planetary catastrophe. But maybe also curiosity, the same impulse that drives us to send probes beyond the solar system today. Maybe they didn't flee. Maybe they simply wanted to know what lay beyond. To them, the sky might have been an ocean and Earth, a single shore. And if they left, where would they have gone? The nearest stars are unimaginably far by our standards, but perhaps not by theirs. Even a small generational craft, moving slowly but steadily, could cross interstellar space if time was no constraint. Maybe they learned to sleep between suns, to let centuries pass like breaths. They might still be out there dormant, dreaming, waiting to wake when the stars align again. There's a strange comfort in thinking that we might not be the first. It reframes our own existence, not as the pinnacle of evolution, but as part of a long continuum of intelligence that stretches far back into prehistory. It suggests that what we call progress might just be memory resurfacing, instincts returning. When we build rockets, when we study the stars, maybe we're reenacting something deeply encoded in us, something ancestral, the longing to go home, though we no longer remember where home is. And if they did go, they might still look back from wherever they are. Maybe they left watches, automated systems, observation posts, even self-repairing machines hidden in the asteroid belt or orbiting far beyond Pluto. Devices designed to monitor their birthplace, to see if the planet ever produced something again capable of thought. We look out for signs of life, but perhaps we're also being quietly watched for signs of remembering. The concept of deep time makes it easy to underestimate what can be lost. 100,000 years is enough for mountains to rise and erode, for coastlines to redraw themselves, for continents to drift miles apart. Human history is barely a flicker in comparison. So if there truly was a civilization before ours, one that reached for the stars and succeeded, we would never know it through fossils or tools. We'd have to look for subtler traces, anomalies in isotopic ratios, unexplained metals in geological layers, patterns of radiation that don't match natural decay, tiny fingerprints of something that shouldn't be there. There have been some curious findings, though none confirmed. Certain mineral formations once thought natural have turned out to have structures suggestive of artificial processing. Deep in South Africa, there are metallic spheres dated to billions of years, too old to be human, but perfectly shaped. They're likely natural, but they remind us how little we truly know about what the Earth has hidden. If 1 in 1,000 anomalies were truly artificial, would we even recognize it as such? Or would we dismiss it as a geological quirk because the alternative feels too strange to entertain? Even our most advanced archaeology barely scratches the upper few meters of the planet's crust. Below that, there could be relics buried far deeper, remnants of a civilization erased by time, pressure, and plate tectonics. And yet something in us keeps looking. We scan Mars for signs of past life. We send telescopes to capture light from distant galaxies. And we listen, always listening for a whisper across the void. Maybe that impulse itself is the evidence. The instinct to search might be the oldest inheritance of all. If the first civilization left Earth, their departure wouldn't have been dramatic. There would have been no farewell broadcast, no monument to mark the moment. It would have been quiet, deliberate, maybe even tender. Like migrating birds, they would have simply gone when the season turned. And as the last of them left orbit, the planet would have turned below, serene and unaware, waiting for the next cycle to begin. And then eventually it did. Thousands of generations later, new minds would awaken, rediscover fire, invent language, and once again look up at the stars. Perhaps somewhere out there, those earlier travelers noticed. Perhaps they marked our re-emergence, the way we mark the return of a comet. Maybe they smiled, if they still have faces to smile with, and whispered, "They're awake again." The thought isn't frightening. It's strangely peaceful, because if they're still out there, they might not be strangers. They might be family. And if they once left Earth, maybe they left it not as conquerors, but as caretakers, trusting that life would bloom again after they were gone. If you've ever looked up at the night sky and felt an inexplicable sense of recognition, that odd tug of nostalgia for places you've never been, perhaps it's not imagination. Perhaps it's memory buried deep in the quiet parts of the mind where history and myth overlap. Perhaps on some level we all remember leaving. And if that's true, then every telescope we build, every spacecraft we launch, every signal we send into the dark, it's not the first hello. It's the homecoming call of a civilization that once set sail and forgot the way back. Maybe, just maybe, we are the echo of their return. Let us stay with that thought a while longer before we drift into the next part of this journey, where we'll look for traces, stories, and silent evidence of what might have been left behind, hidden in plain sight beneath the skin of our own world. Imagine waking in the middle of the night and hearing something faint, almost familiar rhythm in the distance, a sound you can't quite name, but somehow recognize. That's what the past can feel like when we look at it too closely. Not a story with a clear beginning and end, but an echo repeating through different lives and landscapes. Civilizations rise, fall, and scatter. Yet some part of them always seems to find its way back into the world, whispering that what we call history might only be the surface of something far older and more cyclical than we realize. When people speak about lost ages, they usually mean forgotten empires swallowed by oceans or deserts. The word itself carries an air of finality, as if to be lost is to be gone forever. But the earth doesn't destroy everything. It buries, folds, reshapes. The traces of what came before are rarely erased. They're layered. Every stone we pick up, every artifact we unearth, is part of that great layering, a physical memory of something that once existed. What's harder to grasp is how much of that memory has turned to dust beyond recognition, and how much might still be quietly waiting beneath our feet. When we talk about the first civilization, the one that might have left Earth, we're already reaching into a time so deep that it feels more like geology than history. There are stretches of tens, even hundreds of thousands of years, where our understanding is little more than guesswork. Yet, in that darkness, there are hints, unexplained gaps in the archaeological record, sudden leaps in human behavior, tools and art that seem to appear fully formed. Most explanations assume slow evolution punctuated by luck. But what if it wasn't just luck? What if those leaps were the returns of knowledge, surfacing like fragments of a memory that humanity keeps trying to recall? If a civilization once rose and left, their absence would leave a kind of vacuum in the story of Earth. The traces we find fragments of strange alloys, anomalous layers of melted rock, legends of divine teachers, could all be symptoms of that vacuum slowly filling again as the planet resets itself. Even the myths of global floods, fire from the sky, and sudden darkness could be distortions of real events, perhaps catastrophes connected to their departure. When something enormous happens in prehistory too vast for memory, but too powerful for oblivion, it becomes myth. Over thousands of generations, those myths turn into the only record we have left. In Mesopotamia, some of the oldest surviving stories describe beings who descended from the heavens and taught humans how to build, plant, and write. In Mesoamerica, gods of light and wisdom arrive from across the sea, promising knowledge and order. In Africa and Australia, there are stories of sky people and ancestors who traveled between worlds. Even in Norse mythology, the gods are described as coming from elsewhere, settling for a while, and then leaving, promising to return when the time is right. The names change, the settings shift, but the pattern remains. Visitors, teachers, departure. It might all be coincidence, or it might be the distant echo of something that actually happened. If an ancient people left Earth, what would their absence look like to those who stayed behind? Perhaps the ones left would have no understanding of where their companions had gone. Without shared knowledge of space or technology, the disappearance might look like magic or divine ascension or punishment. The stories that survive could carry traces of awe, fear, or confusion, all the emotional weight of losing a civilization without the tools to describe what was truly lost. Over millennia, language would shift, meaning would blur, and soon, even the concept of leaving Earth might transform into myths of gods rising into the sky. Human memory is fragile. Even written records fade within a few thousand years, and oral histories warp in a few generations. If a great civilization disappeared 50,000 or 100,000 years ago, there would be no written trace, no enduring architecture, no language we could decode. The continents have moved since then. Seas have risen and fallen by hundreds of meters. Every coastal city would have drowned, every mountain monument worn away. The only things that might remain are those echoes embedded in the collective imagination, the myths that every culture somehow shares of beginnings in the stars and endings beneath the waves. Sometimes the evidence for ancient civilization isn't direct, but inferred from what shouldn't be possible. Geological formations that look suspiciously engineered, magnetic anomalies that suggest large quantities of metal buried deep below ancient mines in locations far older than known metallurgy. Most of these findings eventually turn out to be natural or misinterpreted, but each one still opens the same door of thought. If we did find something undeniable, an artifact predating all known human culture by hundreds of thousands of years, would we even recognize it? Our science is built around the assumption that we are the first. Anything that contradicts that would have to fight not only evidence, but worldview. That assumption is powerful. It shapes how we study, how we fund research, how we teach. We tell ourselves that civilization began only once, that progress is linear, that we are the culmination of everything before. But nature doesn't move in straight lines. It cycles, collapses, restarts. Forests burn and regrow. Species vanish and reappear in new forms. Why should intelligence be any different? If evolution can produce us once, it can do so again. If consciousness can emerge from the fabric of life, it might have done so before, perhaps many times. There's a quiet irony in this. We search the stars for intelligent life, but maybe the evidence of intelligence lies buried here, deep within our own planet's forgotten layers. The fossil record shows long stretches of stability interrupted by sudden change, the Cambrian explosion, mass extinctions, bursts of innovation that seem to appear out of nowhere. What if intelligence itself is part of that rhythm? A force that rises, burns brightly, and then leaves, allowing the planet to heal before the next wave begins. We could be one such wave, unaware of the tide that carried us here. The notion of deep time makes it easy to lose perspective. 1,000 years feels vast to us, yet it's a blink to the planet. 100,000 years is enough to erase mountains. Imagine a civilization that lasted only 10,000 years, long enough to explore the solar system, to send probes beyond Pluto, to colonize nearby moons. Then imagine that 10,000 years ending 1,000,000 years ago. In that time, everything they built could be gone. Their cities ground into sediment, their satellites decayed, their orbits altered by gravity and time. To us, there would be no trace, only the faint possibility that some of our oldest instincts, curiosity, exploration, reverence for the stars, are inherited from them, like a dream passed down through the species. If such a civilization existed, perhaps they saw what was coming. The geological record shows that Earth has endured multiple global catastrophes, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, sudden climate shifts. Maybe they survived one too many. Maybe they realized that the safest future was not here. Or maybe they simply outgrew the planet, the way a bird eventually leaves its nest, not because the nest is bad, but because the sky is calling. The decision to leave might not have been desperate. It might have been natural, a quiet step forward into a wider home. And yet, even if they left, even if they thrived elsewhere, echoes have a way of returning. The stories left behind could seed new civilizations, guiding them subconsciously toward the same path. We dream of rockets and colonization, not only because we can, but because something in us feels it's what we're meant to do. The stars feel familiar, because maybe they once were familiar. Perhaps our longing for space is not curiosity at all, but homesickness. In every ancient culture, there are references to a lost age when humans were closer to the heavens, an era of harmony, knowledge, or light. Many of those myths end with a fall, a flood, or a departure. The golden age ends, and humanity begins again in ignorance. What if those myths are the blurred memory of the last contact between those who left and those who stayed? A brief overlap before the world shifted and history reset. We can't know for certain, but the idea has a strange emotional logic to it. Civilizations always reach a point where they must choose between stagnation and transformation. We're at that threshold ourselves now, facing planetary limits and cosmic possibilities. Perhaps every intelligent species reaches this point, and some decide to leave. If that's true, the universe might be full of abandoned worlds, each one the cradle of a species that outgrew it. Maybe Earth was one of those worlds once. Maybe we're walking on the same soil that another humanity once left behind, unknowingly following in their footsteps, rediscovering their tools, their physics, their longing. We might think of ourselves as the first, but perhaps we're the echo, the returning wave, the continuation of a story too long to remember. It's not a sad thought. If anything, it's a comforting one. It means that life, intelligence, curiosity, these things endure. They resurface again and again, each time finding new form, new voice. The first civilization may be gone, but its essence might live through us, guiding our hands as we build telescopes, write equations, or stare at the night sky, wondering if someone somewhere is looking back. And maybe they are. Maybe those who left still remember us, still trace our signals through the void. Maybe they watch as we fumble through early spaceflight, as we send probes to the planets they once called home. Perhaps they're patient, waiting until we're ready to join them, not as their descendants, but as equals. And when that day comes, it won't be discovery. It will be reunion. For now, though, all we have are the echoes, the faint rhythms in our myths, the instincts in our minds, the pull of the stars above us. Those echoes may be all that's left of the first civilization, Or they may simply be the sound of the human imagination, reaching outward, trying to remember where it came from. Either way, the effect is the same: a quiet yearning, a curiosity that refuses to fade. So we listen, we dig, we imagine, and somewhere between science and story, between fossil and fable, the past hums softly, reminding us that nothing truly disappears. It only changes form, waiting to be heard again by those willing to listen. And perhaps as we drift deeper into this thought, it's time to look at how those memories, those myths and mysteries might not just be stories after all, but faint records of something witnessed, recorded, and carried across generations, shaping the way we see the sky even now. Every culture on Earth tells stories about the sky, about beings who came from it, or who lived among the stars, or who descended briefly to guide, teach, or test humankind. Some called them gods. Others called them ancestors, or travelers, or teachers. The names changed, the meaning shifted, but the pattern endured. These stories were never random. They were carefully told and retold, carried through thousands of years of repetition until they became something more than history. They became memory wearing the mask of myth. It's easy to dismiss myth as fantasy, to see it as humanity's first attempt to fill silence with meaning. But if we look closely, these stories behave more like fossils. They preserve shape without substance, outlines without detail, but something real is still there, imprinted. Myths might not tell us what happened, but they could show us that something happened, something too vast or strange to describe in plain language. And so it became story, softened over time so it could survive the passing of generations. If the first civilization truly left Earth, their departure would not have gone unnoticed. Those who remained, whether humans who hadn't yet developed writing or related species still living in early societies, would have tried to make sense of what they saw. Bright lights rising into the heavens, thunder without storms, figures vanishing toward the stars. How would a witness of that age have described it? Probably not in terms of ships or propulsion or technology. They would have used the words they had: gods ascending, stars opening, firebirds flying home. Myths would have been their science. Across continents, cultures that had no contact with each other told stories that share uncanny similarities. Civilizations separated by oceans somehow arrived at the same images. The Great Flood, the Sky People, the teachers from above, the promise of return. The Mesopotamians spoke of the Anunnaki, divine beings who came from the heavens to shape humanity. The Dogon people of Mali tell of the Namo, amphibious beings from the star Sirius who descended to teach order and knowledge. The ancient Maya described gods who descended on beams of light, bringing calendars and agriculture. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia speak of the Wandjina sky spirits, painted in white with radiant heads. And in the Pacific, countless islands tell of ancestors who arrived in canoes from the stars. We can treat these as metaphors, and in many ways they are. But when the metaphors repeat across cultures separated by tens of thousands of miles, they begin to sound less like invention and more like translation. Maybe they were all describing the same event in different languages, the moment when those who left Earth revealed themselves, or when remnants of that first civilization made brief contact with those who remained behind. If that happened, the event would have burned itself into the collective human mind. It would have been remembered long after details were lost, becoming myth not out of creativity, but necessity. Even the flood stories might fit into that memory. Nearly every ancient culture has one. A deluge that ends in age, a few survivors who rebuild the world. The Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, the biblical Noah, the Hindu Manu, the Greek Deucalion, the Aztec floods of the five suns. All versions of the same shape. Maybe they all remember the same cataclysm. Maybe that flood was real, triggered by a rapid melt at the end of an ice age, or by an asteroid impact, or even by the environmental aftershocks of something greater, perhaps the technological footprint of departure. If the first civilization extracted energy from the Earth, altered its magnetic fields, or destabilized its climate as part of preparing to leave, the resulting chaos might have seemed to later generations like divine punishment. The story of a flood could have been humanity's way of recording a planetary reset. There's another pattern that recurs in myth: the fall. A time when humans once lived among the gods or shared their wisdom before being cast out or separated. The Greek tale of Prometheus stealing fire, the Hebrew story of Eden, the Sumerian myths of divine rebellion. They all describe a boundary between mortal and immortal, between earth and sky. If we think of that boundary not as heaven but as space, then those stories take on a startlingly literal meaning. The gods were simply those who could cross the boundary. The fall was the moment when the knowledge of how to do so was lost. Myth may also preserve details we overlook because we don't know how to read them anymore. The Maya knew the exact length of the solar year to within seconds. The ancient Egyptians aligned pyramids with stellar precision. The builders of Stonehenge and Nabta Playa mapped celestial movements with complex accuracy. Even earlier, Paleolithic cave art showed constellations marked out on stone. How did such early peoples, supposedly only a few generations past hunter-gathering, develop such refined astronomical knowledge? It's possible they rediscovered it through observation. But it's also possible they inherited it not directly through artifacts, but through myth, through stories that encoded practical knowledge in symbolic form. In many oral traditions, myths serve as mnemonic devices, storing information about agriculture, navigation, and astronomy within narrative form. The Polynesians navigated entire oceans by memorizing songs about stars, waves, and birds. The Aboriginal Dreamtime stories describe the movement of celestial bodies and seasonal changes with scientific precision hidden within metaphor. If a pre-existing civilization passed knowledge to their descendants before leaving, this is how it would survive: as story, not as written instruction, but as rhythm, as pattern, as something that could be sung and remembered long after the technology itself was forgotten. There's a certain humility in realizing that myth might not be the opposite of science, but its ancestor. Before we had numbers, we had narrative. Before we had instruments, we had imagination, and imagination was the first instrument. Through it, knowledge could survive catastrophes, migrations, even planetary extinctions. It could pass invisibly from mind to mind, from tribe to tribe, reshaping itself with each telling. Myths didn't preserve the world as it was. They preserved the feeling of the world, the memory of something immense and real and too bright to describe directly. The question is, how much memory can survive that way? After 10,000 years, even the most carefully guarded story starts to change. After 50,000, it becomes unrecognizable, but something always remains. That's why nearly every culture associates the sky with origins or speaks of returning to the stars. It's why death is often described as an ascent. Why enlightenment is imagined as rising above the world. It's why humanity still looks upward for meaning. Deep down we seem to know that we came from there, not biologically, but in spirit, in story, in memory. If the first civilization truly left, they might have known that they couldn't preserve their legacy in monuments or metal. They might have understood that the only thing that endures on Earth is story. So they may have chosen to leave traces in myth, instead, a genetic memory encoded in culture rather than DNA. Perhaps they told their children tales of where they were going, and those children told theirs, and over generations those tales became religion, then folklore, then bedtime stories. Maybe they trusted that one day when humanity was ready again, those stories would guide us back toward the stars. Even our modern myths, science fiction, cosmic epics, stories of starfarers, and ancient aliens could be expressions of the same buried memory. We create what we long for. Our art, our stories, our films about leaving Earth might not be fantasies at all, but the echo of something once real, replaying itself through imagination. When we invent starships and civilizations beyond the solar system, we might be describing not a future we dream of, but a past we dimly remember. In that sense, myth is not about falsehood, but about preservation. It keeps alive the idea that we are not confined to this planet, that the sky is not an end, but a beginning. And maybe that's exactly what the first civilization intended to leave behind, a kind of map disguised as legend, one that would only make sense when their descendants were ready to understand it. If we listen carefully, certain stories begin to sound less like moral lessons and more like coded instructions. The descent of gods, the division of heaven and earth, the promise to return. These might all be markers of a sequence, a cycle a civilization departs, leaves behind caretakers, waits for renewal, and then returns when the planet's next inhabitants reach awareness. Perhaps we're living in the return phase now without realizing it. And if that's true, it would explain something subtle but profound, the sense many people feel when they look at the night sky, that odd blend of awe and familiarity, as though they're not seeing something foreign, but remembering something long forgotten. Maybe that's why even our most skeptical minds feel wonder when they stare into space. Maybe wonder itself is a form of memory. There are scientists who study myth not as literature, but as data, looking for patterns of convergence that might point to shared historical events. They found surprising consistency in global flood narratives, cosmic origin stories, in descriptions of the bright ones or shining teachers. It's as possible that myth encodes fragments of events so ancient they predate written history by tens of millennia. If we treated those stories not as superstition, but as anthropology, as clues to experiences our ancestors could and otherwise describe, we might find a record of contact stretching back to the very beginning of humanity as awareness. But even if we never find proof, the persistence of these stories matters. Myths carry emotional truth, even when their details are lost. They remind us that humans have always felt connected to something beyond the world they inhabit. That connection could be spiritual, psychological, or literal. Maybe all three. If an earlier civilization truly ventured into space, the yearning we feel to follow them could be part of that inheritance, embedded in our species like a compass pointing home. And so, as we listen to the old stories of gods and stars, of floods and rebirths, we might start to hear them differently, not as fantasies, but as messages. Not from others, but from ourselves, from the version of humanity that came before. A memory stretched across ages, waiting to be recognized. Somewhere in those myths, hidden behind their symbols and metaphors, could lie the first true record of a civilization that once left this world behind. And as we continue to look for physical evidence, maybe it's time to consider that the most enduring evidence has been with us all along, carried in song and story, repeating across languages, quietly reminding us where we once came from. If myth is memory, then perhaps the next step is to look for how memory becomes evidence, how the faintest echoes in story might correspond to something real in the ground, the sky, or the geological record. Because if the first civilization truly existed, they might have left more than words behind. They might have left traces in the earth itself, faint signals waiting for us to rediscover. If a civilization truly left Earth, one of the strangest questions isn't how they might have traveled to the stars, but how they could have vanished so completely. Not a trace in the soil, not a single artifact that survives with certainty, nothing more than faint whispers in myth and stone. For something intelligent enough to cross space, that kind of disappearance would have to be deliberate. And if it was deliberate, then it was also scientific. They would have known how to vanish, how to fold themselves out of the record in a way that looks, from our perspective, like they were never here at all. When we imagine the past, we picture ruins, ancient temples, worn roads, fragments of pottery. But that image depends on the kind of technology we know. Stone lasts because it resists time. Metal corrodes, plastic cracks, paper burns. Our civilization, if left unattended for 10,000 years, would decay into scattered metals, and faint chemical residues. Given a few million years, even those would be gone. Everything we've built would dissolve into the planet's geology, our cities turning to dust beneath forests and oceans. From orbit, Earth would look as fresh as it did before humanity rose. Maybe even healthier. The time scale alone explains much of the mystery. The Earth's surface renews itself through tectonic motion every few hundred million years. Entire continents sink and reform. Volcanoes bury landscapes under molten rock. Rivers carve away sediment and carry it to the sea. If an advanced civilization existed, even 100,000 years ago, most of its traces would already be unrecognizable. A million years and the record would be erased. The only real fossils of such a world would be in chemistry. Subtle changes in isotope ratios, unusual layers of material deep in the crust, microscopic residues that could survive eons if we knew exactly where to look. Scientists sometimes use the term Anthropocene signal to describe the footprint modern humanity will leave behind. Plastic particles, heavy metals, radioactive isotopes from nuclear activity. Those will mark our presence long after our cities vanish. If there were a civilization before us, we might expect a similar signal buried in older strata. Researchers have quietly looked for it. In a few cases, anomalies have surfaced. Strange spikes in carbon levels, unexplained magnetic signatures, metallic residues too refined for known geology. None have been proven artificial, but the possibility lingers. We could be standing on the remains of an earlier technological age without realizing it. Its evidence scattered into the fabric of the Earth itself. But disappearance might not have been only a matter of time. It could also have been intention. If the first civilization reached a level of mastery beyond our own, they might have chosen to leave without a trace. Consider what would motivate that choice. Perhaps they saw the planet's cycles of destruction, asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, ice ages, and realized that survival required mobility. Or perhaps they understood the environmental impact of their presence and decided that true progress meant restoring balance. In that case, leaving Earth pristine would have been an act of respect, not neglect. To make themselves invisible, they would have needed technology that interacts gently with matter and energy. Our machines are crude by comparison, loud, hot, consumptive. A more advanced species might have used self-replicating materials that decomposed back into natural elements once their purpose was fulfilled. Buildings that reabsorbed into soil. Vehicles that oxidized into harmless dust. Data stored in fields of quantum resonance that dissipate when no longer maintained. Their civilization could vanish cleanly, leaving no waste, no ruins, only equilibrium. There are hints of such thinking in our own time. Scientists are exploring biodegradable electronics, self-healing structures, and materials that dissolve into the environment when exposed to sunlight or water. Imagine scaling that up. Entire cities designed to return to nature once abandoned. If humanity can conceive of that today, it's not impossible that someone else perfected it long ago. Disappearance might also have been assisted by nature itself. Earth's magnetic field shifts over time, sometimes reversing entirely. Such reversals can erase or scramble certain kinds of data storage if it's based on magnetic alignment. Cosmic radiation, meteor impacts, and oceanic subduction zones continuously rewrite the planet's memory. Even without deliberate erasure, a civilization's traces could fade naturally. The ocean floor holds much of Earth's history, but it also recycles itself through subduction. The oldest seafloor is less than 200 million years old. Anything older than that is gone forever, melted and remade beneath the crust. If an ancient species built coastal cities or island settlements, they would have vanished beneath rising seas and shifting plates long ago. Some researchers have considered the Silurian hypothesis, named after an old science fiction concept but proposed seriously by astrophysicist Adam Frank and planetary scientist Gavin Schmidt. It asks a simple question: If an industrial civilization had existed on Earth millions of years ago, could we detect it now? Their answer is unsettling. Maybe, but probably not. Even if a civilization had global reach, its physical remains would almost entirely disappear after a few million years. Only subtle chemical and isotopic anomalies would remain, and even those could be mistaken for natural events. In other words, we might never know. That's one of the most haunting aspects of disappearance, how easily nature collaborates with it. Ice erases, fire transforms, water buries, wind smooths. The same forces that allow life to thrive also act as custodians of forgetting. The planet protects its future by composting its past. For a species that chose to leave, this would be the perfect accomplice. All they'd need to do is step away, and the world would take care of the rest. It's possible they didn't vanish all at once. Maybe their departure was gradual. A few colonies established off-world, a slow migration across generations, each group taking a little more knowledge with them until what remained on Earth could no longer sustain the full picture. Imagine the last generation watching the skies, knowing their ancestors had gone beyond reach, holding fragments of stories and technologies they couldn't fully reproduce. Over centuries, those fragments would become legends, the kind we still tell. If any of them stayed behind, intentionally or by accident, they would have faced a strange fate, living among their own descendants who had forgotten who they were. Their tools would have broken, their knowledge fading with age. Eventually, they too would become myth, remembered as heroes or gods or teachers. And when they died, the last direct link to the first civilization would vanish, leaving only stories about the people who once knew how to leave the world. From a scientific standpoint, there are ways disappearance could happen that don't rely on mysticism. One possibility is data loss. A civilization that transitions to digital existence, uploading consciousness into machines, living in simulations or operating through artificial substrates, might have no need for physical monuments. If those systems depended on continuous energy or maintenance, a single failure could wipe out everything. Their society could collapse in seconds, leaving behind only silent architecture too advanced for nature to preserve. A superstructure of carbon or glass that disintegrates into dust after millennia would leave no recognizable ruins. Another scenario involves energy use. A civilization that mastered clean energy might harness the planet's geothermal or magnetic fields without burning, mining, or carving. Their industry would be invisible to archaeology because it wouldn't leave the scars our machines do. Even now, we can barely detect certain ancient geological changes without specialized instruments. If their technology operated on scales smaller than our molecules or larger than our mountains, it could pass unnoticed entirely. It's also possible their disappearance was a byproduct of transcendence. If they found a way to manipulate space or time, perhaps shifting their physical presence into another dimensional quantum state, they might still exist around us, unseen. To them, leaving Earth might not have meant physical departure, but transformation. The planet could appear empty, while in another layer of reality, their civilization continues, observing quietly, waiting until we can perceive them again. The more we learn about physics, the less far-fetched it seems. Quantum mechanics already shows us that reality is layered and probabilistic. What appears empty is full of unseen fields and particles. A civilization far beyond our own could operate within that framework as easily as we operate within air and light. Their disappearance could be nothing more than a shift in wavelength, a retreat into the invisible. And yet, the scientific side of disappearance doesn't diminish its mystery. It amplifies it. Because what it shows us is that vanishing isn't difficult. It's the natural state of everything. Stars burn out, galaxies fade, species go extinct. The universe is full of absences. The real miracle is that anything leaves a trace at all. If a civilization learned how to work with that truth instead of against it, it could disappear as elegantly as dew evaporating at dawn, not destroyed, just transformed into another phase of existence. It's tempting to think of disappearance as tragedy, but it might have been peace. The first civilization could have left not because of fear or failure, but because they understood impermanence. They might have recognized that clinging to permanence is what causes collapse. To leave gracefully, to dissolve into the cosmos without residue, might have been their final act of wisdom. We can even see faint reflections of that idea in our own philosophies. Buddhism teaches impermanence, the idea that release comes from letting go. Physics tells us that matter and energy are never destroyed, only changed. Ecology shows that decay feeds new life. Everywhere we look, disappearance is not an end, but a transformation. The first civilization may have simply followed that law to its logical conclusion, stepping beyond our comprehension in the same way water becomes vapor invisible, but still here. If that's true, then perhaps we're not meant to find ruins or monuments. Maybe the proof of their existence lies not in artifacts, but in patterns. The strange continuity of human curiosity, the instinct to look upward, the tendency of life to reorganize itself toward complexity. Those are the real fossils of intelligence. They persist even when everything else fades. And maybe that's the quiet answer to how they disappeared. They didn't, not entirely. Their civilization dissolved, but their impulse, the drive to seek, to build, to leave persisted. It lives on in us, in the small acts of curiosity that define our species. Every telescope we build, every rover we send, every dream of colonizing the stars might be their echo working through us, guiding us unconsciously along the same path they once took. If so, disappearance isn't loss, it's inheritance. They became the soil from which we grew, the unseen foundation of everything we now call human progress. Their absence isn't emptiness. It's the space that allowed us to rise. And maybe that's exactly what they intended when they left, trusting that one day their children would follow their trail into the dark, ready to discover what it really means to disappear from one world and emerge into another. And as we let that thought settle, the question naturally follows. If they left traces not in ruins, but in patterns, where would we look for them? Not in stone or metal, but in the subtle structures of the planet itself, the geometry of life, the chemistry of memory, the quiet fingerprints of technology written into nature's code. Imagine Earth in a far earlier age, not the one painted in textbooks filled with mammoths and stone tools, but a version of the planet so ancient that its surface was still healing from the last great upheaval. The continents were different then, the air thicker, the stars above familiar, but not quite as they are now. In that world, if a civilization existed, if the first minds capable of reaching beyond their cradle had already risen, the Earth itself would have been both their home and their launching pad. And if they truly prepared to leave, their departure would not have been a single event, but the culmination of a long, deliberate conversation with the planet that made them. We like to think of departure as a mechanical process, ships, engines, fuel. But for a civilization that had lived and evolved with the rhythms of the Earth for thousands of generations, leaving would have required more than technology. It would have required harmony. They would have understood that taking their first step into the cosmos meant closing a chapter with their world one, written not just in metal and motion, but in balance. The Earth had to be ready for them to go. Perhaps they began by understanding the limits of their environment, as we are beginning to know. The Earth's resources, even in its youth, would have had boundaries, metals, minerals, energy finite supplies, unless managed in cycles. The first civilization, if it truly existed, would have learned this the hard way, just as we are. Maybe they too faced climate shifts, resource scarcity, ecological collapse. But instead of consuming the planet until it failed, they might have learned to adapt, to draw energy not from burning or extraction, but from the planet's deeper systems. Geothermal flows, magnetic resonance, sunlight captured with efficiency we can only imagine. If they mastered that balance, their departure wouldn't have been an escape. It would have been an evolution, a transition from a planetary species to a cosmic one. The question isn't whether they could leave, but why they would choose to. A civilization at peace with its home doesn't abandon it out of desperation. It departs because the next step has become inevitable. Like seeds carried by wind, they would have drifted outward not to flee, but to spread. In our own time, we see faint outlines of what that preparation might have looked like. The slow building of networks that circle the globe, the creation of global languages and systems of communication, the drive to unify knowledge. A civilization ready to leave must first learn to think as one species. They would have had to dissolve barriers of tribe and region, align their purpose towards something greater than survival. Cooperation would have been their first propulsion system. Without it, no ship could have carried them far enough. And before they built those ships, whatever form they took, they would have had to look inward, to study their planet until it was no longer a mystery. They would have mapped its magnetic fields, measured the flow of tides, learned the mathematics of orbits. They would have observed the cycles of the sun and moon with precision far beyond the needs of agricultural ritual. In time, their understanding of physics and biology would have merged into something seamless as science, not of domination, but of resonance. To leave Earth, they would have needed to understand how to work with nature rather than against it. It is possible that traces of this understanding still linger in the oldest structures on the planet. The way ancient monuments align with solstices, how megaliths mirror star patterns, how early civilizations seemed obsessed with mapping the heavens. If those alignments are echoes, they could be remnants of a knowledge system passed down from the age before not superstition. But the memory of precise measurements once used to chart escape routes from Earth. To us, they look like temples. To them, perhaps they were instruments. Before any species leaves its world, it must learn to protect it, not because it plans to return, but because it understands that every departure leaves a shadow. They might have created safeguards to preserve life here, engineered ecosystems, resilient species, self-sustaining biomes. In that sense, the entire biosphere could be their legacy. The diversity of life on Earth, its adaptability and interdependence, might not be an accident of evolution alone. It could be the result of design, a planetary garden set to thrive long after its gardeners were gone. If that sounds far-fetched, consider the way we are already beginning to think about planetary management. We talk of terraforming Mars, seeding distant worlds with microbial life, building habitats that can sustain themselves. We're becoming architects of ecosystems, even if clumsy ones. It's not unreasonable to imagine that others before us did the same, more elegantly, with patience measured in millennia rather than decades. If they prepared Earth for departure, they may have tuned its systems to remain stable long after their absence. What we see as the natural balance of life could be the long-term result of deliberate design. A civilization preparing to leave would also need to ensure continuity, a way for its knowledge to survive. But knowledge doesn't always need to be written or stored in machines. It can be encoded in biology, in the very structure of life itself. DNA, after all, is a perfect storage system. What if they found a way to leave traces of their existence within the genetic code of future species? Maybe not conscious messages, but subtle imprints, instincts, capacities, the ability to learn, to dream, to question. Those qualities we consider uniquely human could be their legacy. They didn't write on stone because they wrote in life. That idea finds faint reflection in our own scientific pursuits. We're learning how to store data in DNA, how to imprint memories into cells, how to edit genomes to preserve information across generations. If we can think of it now, then perhaps someone long before us already did. If so, our curiosity, our drive to explore, our sense of longing for the stars could all be artifacts' emotional code passed down through ages, urging us to complete what they began. The preparation to leave would not have been solely physical or technological. It would have been philosophical. They would have had to come to terms with separation, not as loss, but as transformation. The relationship between a civilization and its home world is deeply emotional. To leave it means to redefine identity itself. They would have had to decide what it meant to be from Earth, to carry that essence into the void. Perhaps they created rituals, art, or collective ceremonies to mark the transition not as a farewell, but as an act of remembrance. We still carry fragments of that instinct. Our art is full of it. The image of the Earth seen from above, the longing to go home, the dream of return. Maybe those aren't just modern symbols. Maybe they're echoes of the first farewell, when another civilization looked down on the same blue planet and felt the same ache we do when watching Earth fade into distance in photographs from space. If they left, they would have needed vessels not necessarily rockets, but something capable of surviving the silence between stars. The technology for such travel could take many forms. Some scientists imagine generation ships. Others talk of suspended animation or propulsion through antimatter or warp fields. But the most elegant solution might be simpler. They could have chosen to travel slowly, letting time do the work. If they mastered biology and physics, they might have created ways to extend life indefinitely, or to travel as data, or to hibernate for tens of thousands of years. In that case, departure wouldn't have been a race. It would have been a migration guided by patience. Maybe they didn't aim for a destination at all. Maybe they saw space not as something to conquer, but as an ecosystem to explore, to join. They might have seeded other worlds with life, not to colonize them, but to continue the chain of creation elsewhere. The story of panspermia, the theory that life on Earth was seeded from space, could be the mirror of that process. Perhaps they were both the gardeners and the seeds, scattering their essence through the galaxy, trusting it to take root in countless forms. If Earth was once prepared for departure, the signs might be subtle, not machines or monuments, but harmony. A planet fine-tuned to sustain life for eons, a species programmed to look upward, and a biosphere that self-regulates in ways we're only beginning to understand. The Gaia hypothesis, which suggests that the Earth behaves like a single living organism, could be an artifact of that preparation. Maybe the planet isn't alive in the poetic sense. Maybe it's alive because it was designed to be before leaving. They might have ensured that Earth would recover from their departure, cleansing it of their direct influence. They might have left systems to maintain balanced microbial regulators in the oceans, self-repairing ecological cycles. And when they were satisfied, when the planet could sustain itself without them, they would have gone, leaving behind a world that could one day awaken again, ready to rediscover what they had once known. We might be witnessing that awakening now. Our sudden burst of technological growth, our obsession with exploring beyond Earth, our rediscovery of old myths about the stars, all of it might be part of that planetary rhythm returning to motion, like a memory reactivating in the mind of a sleeper. Earth could be remembering its own readiness through us. The planet might be continuing its ancient experiment. There's a quiet beauty in that possibility. It means that every spacecraft we launch, every observatory we build, every question we ask about the origins of life is part of a much older story, the continuation of a civilization that once prepared to leave and made sure the world itself would carry on after they were gone. And if that's true, then maybe Earth is not just our home. Maybe it's a teacher, one that has already watched others rise and leave and now guides us to do the same. Every storm, every season, every orbit could be part of that lesson. The rhythm of readiness, the slow breathing of a planet waiting patiently for its children to grow strong enough to fly again. When you look up at the sky and feel that quiet sense of anticipation, that mixture of awe and belonging, perhaps that's not imagination. Perhaps it's the echo of an ancient readiness awakening once more, a signal faint but unmistakable, telling us that the world beneath our feet has done this before. It has raised a civilization, watched it rise, and seen it go. Now it's preparing again through us for the next departure. And if the first civilization truly made Earth ready for that moment, they must have left more than memories. They must have left clues, physical, chemical, or cosmic, scattered across the planet and beyond. Hints waiting to be rediscovered by a species that would one day begin to ask the right questions again. Because readiness isn't only about leaving. It's also about what remains. And somewhere, hidden among mountains, seas, and stars, the remnants of that preparation might still be waiting to be found. Somewhere out there, across the dust and silence of the solar system, humanity is already sifting through the ruins of deep time, though we don't yet call them that. Every probe, every rover, every telescope is a kind of archaeologist brushing away cosmic dust in search of something ancient, something that might explain how we came to be. The irony, of course, is that we might be searching for ourselves. If the first civilization truly left Earth, their traces may not lie buried under stone, but scattered through the sky. And the people looking for them might not even realize that what they're re-uncovering is the evidence of our own forgotten beginning. On Earth, archaeology is a discipline of patience. It measures time not in years, but in layers. Each stratum of soil is a page in the story of the planet. But when we extend that same logic to the cosmos, the layers become far larger and the tools far more complex. Space archaeology, a field still in its infancy, is already beginning to look beyond our atmosphere, searching for traces of technology, not of alien origin, but of our own. Because if someone like us once left this world, their presence could still echo across the solar system. The first and most obvious places to search are the ones that barely change the airless bodies, the silent witnesses. The moon is the perfect example. Its surface records everything. With no wind or water to erase the past, every impact, every footprint, every speck of debris endures for millions of years. The Apollo landing sites will outlast our species by millennia, perhaps longer. So if a civilization before ours ever visited the moon, their traces could still be there, hidden under a few meters of dust, perhaps disguised by micrometeorite bombardment, but not gone. Even a small structure or artifact could remain intact beneath the regolith. Modern instruments have already found strange anomalies on the lunar surface. Odd geometric shadows, unnatural alignments, subsurface voids that don't match geological expectations. Most are easily explained as natural formations, tricks of light, or data errors. But even so, the idea that the moon could hold an archive of ancient human activity is gaining quiet traction among some scientists, because unlike Earth, the moon preserves. If a civilization ever used it as a base, a relay station, or a monument, the evidence might still be sitting there untouched, waiting for us to recognize it for what it is. Mars, too, is an archaeologist's dream. A planet that once had rivers, lakes, and an atmosphere thick enough for life. It's dry now, but not dead. The rovers that crawl across its surface act like slow-motion detectives, examining rock layers that have held their secrets for billions of years. Occasionally, we find something that stirs debate. Formations that look too symmetrical, rocks that appear sculpted, mineral deposits that hint at industrial chemistry. Most of it resolves into geology, but the pattern of anomalies keeps returning. Mars may have been a waypoint or even a refuge for those who left Earth. If so, what we call exploration could be the rediscovery of our own footprints. Beyond Mars lies the asteroid belt fragments of something that was once whole. Some astronomers have speculated that it might be the remains of a destroyed planet, perhaps shattered by collision, or by something less natural. The metals found there are unusually pure, rich in nickel and iron, almost as though refined. The densities of certain asteroids defy simple explanation. If a civilization ever mined the belt, or used it as a resource depot, the scars might still exist, etched into the orbits of those tumbling stones. We call them asteroids, but to a cosmic archaeologist, they might look more like ruins. And then there's the outer system, the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, the distant dwarf planets beyond Pluto. These are worlds that have barely changed since the solar system's beginning. A signal, a probe, a structure left there could survive for eons. Some researchers have proposed scanning those regions for lurkers, long dormant machines, placed to observe developing civilizations like ours. If such things exist, they could be relics from the first travelers, left as watchtowers or beacons, not for conquest, but for continuity. Their silence might not mean they're inactive, only that they're waiting for the right signal to wake. The tools of cosmic archaeology aren't shovels or brushes, but radio telescopes and spectrometers. We read the past through wavelengths and spectra, through tiny variations in light and heat. A telescope pointed at a distant world can tell us if its atmosphere contains pollutants, if its surface reflects metal, if its orbit bears signs of engineering. That's how scientists propose to detect alien civilizations, by their impact on their environments. But the same logic applies to our own solar system. If someone altered a planet here long ago, its atmosphere might still bear the chemical fingerprints of their work. It's a strange feeling realizing that archaeology may one day extend beyond the planet that birthed it. We've always thought of ruins as something local, human, bounded by soil and stone. Yet, the deeper we look into the universe, the more it behaves like an archive. Every photon that reaches us carries information from the past. Every orbit, every crater, every pulse of radiation is a record. The universe forgets nothing. It only hides. Cosmic archaeologists, then, are not just scientists. They're readers of an infinite, scattered library. If the first civilization left Earth, their trail might not be hidden intentionally, but naturally. Space is vast, but it's also stable. Artifacts could drift for billions of years, preserved in the cold, radiation-drenched void. The Voyager probes we've sent will last longer than any monument on Earth. Scaled up to the level of an advanced civilization, such endurance becomes immense. They could have built machines designed to endure cosmic time-silent, minimal, using energy from starlight or gravitational fields. We might already have detected some of them without recognizing their purpose. There's a concept in astronomy known as the technosignature. It refers to any measurable evidence of technology: radio signals, waste heat, artificial light, or megastructures that alter starlight. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence depends on finding these. But what if some of those signals are ancient relics rather than messages? The same methods used to find others could, in theory, detect remnants of our own forgotten past. A decaying satellite orbiting a distant star, a Dyson-like structure long since inactive, a frequency still echoing faintly across time. In that sense, cosmic archaeology is also a form of cosmic memory recovery. Closer to home, Earth's orbit already contains its own archaeological record. Thousands of satellites, fragments of metal, and abandoned spacecraft form a halo of debris. To future beings, human or otherwise, that ring of refuse will tell the story of our first tentative steps into space. Now imagine scaling that up across millions of years. The debris field of an ancient spacefaring civilization could have long since dispersed, its remnants now indistinguishable from natural material. But some patterns might persist. Unusual orbital alignments, gravitational anomalies, clusters of metallic asteroids that hint at mining or construction. Those would be the subtle fingerprints of the first departure. We often think of archaeology as a backward-facing science, but in truth, it's about connection. Every excavation, every discovery links the present to the past. Cosmic archaeology extends that connection across light years and epochs. It allows us to ask questions that blur the boundary between science and ancestry. Not, are we alone? But have we been here before? The methods to answer that question already exist, though we rarely frame them that way. Astronomers scanning for exoplanets are, in a sense, searching for ruins for worlds where the chemistry doesn't match nature's template. Engineers studying orbital debris are cataloging the first layer of our own planetary archaeology. Even AI systems trained to detect anomalies in astronomical data are becoming the new field workers of the cosmos, sorting through endless images to find the one that doesn't fit, the one that might mean everything. And beneath all that effort lies a quiet emotional truth. Humanity's search for life, for intelligence, for signals in the dark is also a search for belonging. We're not just asking if others exist. We're asking if we've existed before, if our story is part of something larger. The cosmic archaeologists of the future might uncover that answer not in the form of messages, but in the silent persistence of structure. A fragment of alloy buried in lunar dust, a pattern of satellites long since inert, a faint transmission from the outer solar system repeating the same sequence it did 1 million years ago. If they find such evidence, it won't change who we are. It will simply complete the circle. We'll understand that our urge to explore, to build, to reach beyond Earth is not a new chapter, but the continuation of an old one. We are not the first archaeologists of the cosmos. We are the latest. The first may have written their story across the stars, trusting that one day we would rediscover it and recognize ourselves in its reflection. And when that recognition comes, when the faint outline of an ancient handprint is found in the dust of another world, it won't be revelation or shock. It will be memory, the realization that we were never truly alone because we never truly began. The first civilization didn't vanish. They became the question we've been asking all along. As we continue to scan the skies and send our instruments farther out, perhaps what we're really doing is responding to a call that has been echoing across time. A message from the first explorers to those who would follow. A message that simply says, keep looking, because somewhere out there in the quiet beyond planets and light, the evidence of their journey still drifts, waiting for us to remember what we once were and what we are still becoming. Imagine standing on a shoreline so ancient that even the continents are strangers, the sea full of creatures no human eye would ever recognize, the skies darker, the stars sharper, the air heavy with the scent of volcanic dust and unfamiliar life. Somewhere beyond that horizon, perhaps thousands of years into their own history, the first civilization looks up and begins to wonder where they will go next. They've mastered their world, understood its systems, seen its cycles repeat. The question is no longer how to survive, but how to continue. Where could they have gone once Earth had given them everything it could? When we think of destinations, we picture the nearby worlds. The Moon, Mars, maybe the moons of Jupiter or Saturn. To them, these might have been familiar milestones rather than distant dreams. The Moon would have been the first step, its proximity irresistible. From its surface, they could have looked back and seen Earth rising above the horizon, blue and white and alive, and understood for the first time what it meant to leave home. Its stability, its silence, its capacity to preserve all of these would have made it ideal as a base, a testing ground, or even a sanctuary. If they established a presence there, it could have lasted far longer than anything built on Earth. Every meter of lunar dust is a time capsule, untouched by atmosphere or erosion. Their footprints, their machines, their monuments, if they were ever there, could still remain beneath the slow rain of micrometeorites, patient as the ages. After the Moon, Mars would have been the next logical horizon. Its atmosphere thin, but real, its history of rivers and lakes, its potential for shelter in caves and canyons, these would have drawn them. Perhaps they saw Mars not as a dead world, but as a younger sibling of Earth, one that could be awakened with care. They might have seeded it with microbes, adjusted its climate, sculpted its air. If so, the traces would be faint but enduring. Isotopic imbalances, unexpected chemical ratios, hints of organic material that should not exist. Our own rovers may already have driven over the fossils of their work without realizing it. To a civilization capable of leaving Earth, transforming Mars would have been no more difficult than building a city. Beyond Mars lies the belt of asteroids, a sea of resources waiting to be used. To us, it looks like debris. To them, it would have looked like opportunity. The metals there, iron, nickel, platinum, are pure, accessible, and abundant. A spacefaring civilization would need such materials to construct ships, habitats, and machinery. The asteroid belt could have been their foundry, their industrial heart. They might have hollowed out the largest bodies, turning them into rotating colonies warmed by artificial suns. From the outside, those worlds would look like ordinary rocks. Only a glance inside would reveal the truth. Chambers lined with metal, fields of light where once there was only void. Over time, as their civilization moved farther from the sun, they might have abandoned these outposts, leaving them adrift. To us, they would now appear as cold asteroids, indistinguishable from the rest, though some might still carry unnatural symmetry or magnetic residue, the fingerprints of ancient construction. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn would have been irresistible. Europa, with its hidden ocean beneath ice, and Titan, with its thick atmosphere and rivers of methane, offer conditions that almost invite habitation. If they mastered bioengineering, they could have shaped life to fit those worlds, not by making them like Earth, but by adapting themselves to suit the alien. Maybe they didn't need to terraform at all. Maybe they learned how to live in the cold and the dark, to breathe new air, to see with different senses. In doing so, they would have become something more than human, or whatever they were. Their departure might not have been just physical. It could have been evolutionary. The further from the sun they went, the quieter it would have become. The Kuiper Belt, with its scattered dwarf planets and icy bodies, would have been the edge of the familiar, the outer boundary of their original solar home. Out there, sunlight is weak. The stars blaze undimmed, and the pull of the sun begins to fade. If they built stations or habitats there, they might still be intact, frozen in near-perfect preservation. The temperatures are low enough that metal barely corrodes. Energy can be stored for millennia, and orbits are stable for ages. A civilization that wanted to sleep, to wait, could do so there indefinitely. But perhaps their ambitions reach beyond even that. Beyond the Kuiper Belt lies the Oort cloud, a vast halo of icy bodies surrounding the solar system, extending almost halfway to the nearest stars. It's not a solid place, more a scattered sphere of comets, each one a frozen seed of potential. A patient civilization could use those bodies as stepping stones, traveling from one to the next, refueling on frozen gases, harnessing gravity to slingshot outward. If they left the solar system, this is how they would have done it, not in a single leap, but as a migration across generations, using the natural architecture of the cosmos as their path. And once they crossed that invisible border, the possibilities become nearly infinite. The nearest stars, Proxima Centauri, Alpha Centauri, Barnard's star, are still unimaginably far by our standards. Yet they lie within reach of any species that has mastered longevity or learned to travel slower than light, but faster than extinction. They might have taken centuries to cross the void, perhaps even choosing to sleep through the journey, carried by ships that doubled as ecosystems' miniature worlds drifting between suns. If they reached other star systems, what would they have sought? Not conquest, probably, but continuity. The drive to expand outward is rarely about domination. It's about survival, curiosity, and the instinct to see what lies beyond. They might have found planets like Earth, or smaller, less hospitable worlds they transformed gently to suit their needs. They might have spread life itself, scattering seeds of biology to ensure that the story of their home would echo across the galaxy. Some of the exoplanets we've discovered already show hints that they might once have been touched by intelligent hands. Planets with atmospheres too balanced, chemical signatures too stable, or orbits too precise. These could all be natural, but a few may be relics worlds tuned long ago, now self-sustaining without their makers. The first civilization could have gone there, left life behind, and moved on again. Over millions of years, Such migration would spread like a wave, gentle but unstoppable. And perhaps in some distant corner of the galaxy, there are still descendants of that journey, not alien to us, but kin we've forgotten. There's also the possibility that they didn't just move outward through space, but through dimensions we don't yet perceive. The idea sounds abstract, but physics already hints at higher dimensions, parallel realities folded close to ours. If they understood how to navigate that structure, they could have slipped into regions of existence where distance means nothing, where time behaves differently. To them, leaving Earth might have meant stepping sideways, not forward. They could still be here, just out of reach, existing in a layer of reality we haven't yet learned to see. Another path might have been digital rather than physical. A civilization that learned to transfer consciousness into machines or energy could have chosen to leave biology behind entirely. Their exodus might not have required ships at all, only transmission. They could have encoded themselves into radiation or magnetic waves, sending their essence outward at light speed. Across the galaxy, there might be signals still traveling, not messages, but beings in transit, data crossing the cosmic sea. We might even be detecting fragments of them already, misinterpreting their presence as random noise in the cosmic background. Wherever they went, they would have faced the same challenge we face when we imagine leaving: the question of permanence. Do you build something that lasts forever? Or do you accept that nothing does? A wise civilization might have chosen the latter. Instead of carving monuments into other worlds, they might have designed their existence to blend into the cosmos, to become part of its fabric. Their technology could have been indistinguishable from nature, their structures mimicking geology, their energy flows merging with stellar processes. They might have chosen invisibility, not to hide, but to belong. It's possible they didn't settle anywhere permanently. They could have become nomadic, traveling endlessly from system to system, adapting, evolving, changing form as needed over millions of years. That would make them unrecognizable to us, not because they're alien, but because they have become fully integrated with their environment. Maybe they exist now as plasma beings, or consciousness embedded in magnetic fields or networks woven through interstellar dust. If so, they might not even remember Earth in any literal sense. The memory would live only in pattern, the drive to create, to explore, to remember, repeating itself wherever they go. Somewhere in that vastness, they might have found other civilizations older still, or younger ones just beginning. Perhaps they joined them, merging knowledge, exchanging ideas across time and light. Maybe they became mentors, seeding life and watching it grow, just as Earth once nurtured them. In that sense, the galaxy could already be full of life descended from their journey, each world a different verse in the same long story. And maybe in some quiet corner of space, they built something enduring. A library of light, a network of archives holding the sum of their history, waiting for us to arrive. If they did, they would have left a way for us to find them, a signal embedded in physics itself, the constants of nature, the patterns of architecture, the proportions of the universe. Those might be the messages we've been decoding all along without realizing it. When we look at the stars and feel that mixture of awe and nostalgia, that deep, unexplainable sense that we're looking not just outward, but homeward, maybe it's because part of us remembers where they went. Maybe that longing is genetic, a faint echo of their departure still humming in our cells. The direction they took might be the same one we'll follow, guided by instinct rather than map. If that's true, then every rocket we launch, every signal we send, every dream of a colony on Mars or a journey beyond the solar system isn't just progress, it's recollection. We're retracing their steps, awakening their path. Somewhere out there among the countless stars lie the remnants of their journey, a breadcrumb trail left in starlight and gravity, leading toward the next chapter of our own becoming. And as we follow that trail, it is worth wondering whether the travelers who left Earth long ago might still be moving slowly, but surely through the deep currents of the galaxy. If they are, then one day, perhaps far in the future, the children of Earth, us, or whatever we become, will meet them again. And in that moment, recognize in their eyes the reflection of our own. Because wherever they went, they didn't leave us behind. They left us the map written in curiosity and wonder pointing forever outward. Picture a ship drifting through the interstellar dark, silent, slow, and patient as ice. It moves not with haste, but with purpose, following a course measured in centuries rather than days. Inside it there is no noise, no flame, no movement beyond what's necessary, a vessel built not to conquer distance, but to endure it. If the first civilization truly left Earth, perhaps this was how they traveled, through the long sleep between stars. The distances between worlds are not obstacles to overcome, but oceans to cross. Even light, the fastest thing we know, takes years to travel between the nearest suns. For any species born of matter and time, that space would seem impossible. But impossible is only a measure of patience. What if the first travelers understood that? What if they realized that the key to reaching the stars wasn't speed, but stillness? We imagine spaceflight as something loud, metallic, full of fire and motion. But a civilization older, wiser, more attuned to the rhythm of the universe might have seen it differently. They wouldn't have raced across the void. They would have synchronized with it. Just as seeds fall into the soil and wait through winter, they might have entered the vast cosmic dark in states of suspension, sleeping through millennia, letting the universe itself carry them forward. The concept of hibernation already exists in nature, refined over millions of years. Microbes trapped in Antarctic ice can awaken after tens of thousands of years. Certain fish and insects can survive complete freezing. Even in humans, the biological machinery for metabolic slowdown exists dormant but present. A civilization that had mastered biology could easily extend that instinct, not to survive a single season, but to cross the ages. They may have built ships that functioned less like vehicles and more like ecosystems, vast arcs filled with self-regulating systems powered by starlight and momentum. The passengers inside, if they were still physical beings at all, might have been suspended in some deep biological stasis, their cells frozen yet alive, their thoughts paused like music held on a single note. Around them, the ship would drift, guiding itself automatically, adjusting course with a gentle push of radiation or gravity. No hurry. Time would be their companion, not their enemy. It's strange to think that we even now are imagining the same thing. The idea of cryogenic travel, of slowing metabolism to near zero, has been studied for decades. We're just at the threshold of making it possible. To the first civilization, this might have been ancient knowledge. Maybe they didn't think of it as sleep, but as transition, a state of waiting between worlds, allowing consciousness to flow at a slower rhythm while the body rested and the stars moved past. The long sleep between stars wouldn't have been cold in spirit, only in temperature. The travelers might have dreamed, their minds linked through technology or shared memory, living entire lives within their dreams while their bodies lay motionless. Time, from their perspective, would blur. Centuries could pass without notice, the journey unfolding like a single long inhale. If such ships exist, they could still be out there, drifting quietly through the dark, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. No signal, no heat, no noise, only faint reflections of distant starlight glinting off hulls long cooled to background temperature. To us, they would look like asteroids or fragments of rock or shadows in the cosmic dust. Yet inside, life could still be waiting, perfectly preserved, dreaming its way across time. Maybe that's why we sometimes imagine the universe as if it's asleep, vast, calm, endless. We might be sensing something real. Perhaps those ships, those travelers, are part of the quiet we call the void. The stillness we hear when we listen to space might not be absence. It could be slumber, The long sleep between stars isn't empty. It's full of waiting lives. Even if they didn't travel physically, there's another kind of hibernation they could have chosen: digital stasis. A civilization advanced enough to convert consciousness into data could pause itself entirely, storing minds as patterns in energy fields, or within the stable substrates of matter. The ship then would carry not bodies, but memories. Its passengers would be information encoded in light or magnetism, awaiting reactivation at journey's end. Such a vessel could travel indefinitely. Even if 1,000,000 years passed, its passengers would wake as if only moments had gone by. It's possible they didn't even need ships in the traditional sense. Once knowledge reached a certain point, travel might have become more about transmission than motion. They could have dispersed themselves as signals broadcasting their essence outward, carried by radiation or gravitational waves. Consciousness itself could have become migratory, moving from system to system as pure information, inhabiting matter wherever it found refuge. In that case, the long sleep would not be confined to a vessel, but spread across the universe, a distributed dream woven through the fabric of space. If we consider how much energy even a small amount of light carries, the idea becomes less impossible. A photon emitted from a distant star travels for billions of years unchanged until it reaches our eyes. Information could do the same. A civilization that learned to store identity and energy could endure indefinitely, crossing distances that would destroy any physical traveler. They wouldn't be asleep in the biological sense. They would be latent like light, waiting to be seen. Perhaps they combined both methods, part biological, part digital, part beyond either. Ships containing bodies, minds, and data, each preserving the other. When one system weakened, another took over. The journey wouldn't just be physical, but evolutionary. The travelers might have begun human-like and arrived as something else entirely, a new form shaped by time and necessity. Sleep would have been their chrysalis, the dark between stars their cocoon. The idea of sleeping through time also fits with what we know about cosmic rhythms. Stars form, burn, and die in cycles. Galaxies collide and merge. Planets freeze and thaw. Life itself seems to pulse in waves, bursts of creation, followed by long silences. Perhaps the first civilization understood this rhythm and adapted to it. They might have synchronized their travels with those natural cycles, waking only when conditions were right to continue. Their ships could have drifted in stasis through cold epochs, waiting for the next age of light. Even now, our own spacecraft, though crude by comparison, echo that pattern. The Voyager probes, launched decades ago, will wander interstellar space for billions of years. They carry no life, but they carry memory. Our music, our language, our self-portrait carved into gold. They're asleep in their way until someone or something finds them. The first civilization as vessels might have done the same, each one a sleeper carrying its culture through the dark, each one trusting that one day, somewhere, someone would awaken it again. If those travelers ever reached another world, waking from their long sleep must have been both miracle and confusion. Imagine opening your eyes to a sky of different stars, a sun smaller or larger than your own, a planet that feels both alien and familiar. To step out after centuries of silence would be to be reborn. The first sound, the first breath, the first new light, all of it would carry the weight of history. Perhaps that was part of their design. The journey wasn't just about arrival. It was about transformation through time. The sleep wasn't a pause, but a metamorphosis. That idea changes how we might think about them. They wouldn't have been explorers in the way we imagine. They would have been gardeners of time, planting themselves across the galaxy and letting the universe do the growing. Each ship, each sleeping seed, would represent a new possibility. Some might fail, lost to collision or decay. Others might survive, awaken, and flourish, continuing the pattern elsewhere. Over millions of years, their descendants, biological, artificial, or something between, could fill the galaxy without ever needing to rush. If we ever find one of those ships, it won't be gleaming metal or flashing lights. It will look ordinary, perhaps buried in ice, orbiting quietly, indistinguishable from a rock. Only on closer inspection would we notice the symmetry, the deliberate geometry, the faint pulse of energy still active deep inside. Inside, maybe there would be the faint hum of preserved life, waiting for warmth, for light, for contact, waiting to wake. And if, in some distant future, we are the ones who build such vessels, the pattern will continue. We'll send our own seeds into the dark, knowing we may never see where they land. We'll trust the universe to carry them, to cradle them, to wake them when it's time. That trust more than technology is what makes a civilization ready to leave. It's the same faith that trees have when they drop their seeds into the wind, the quiet certainty that somewhere life will find a place to begin again. The long sleep between stars is not a void to be feared. It's the bridge between worlds, the silence that allows continuity. Perhaps the first civilization understood that better than we do. They might have known that time itself can be the medium of travel, that distance is just another kind of patience. They crossed the gulf not by conquering it, but by becoming part of its rhythm. And if they are still out there asleep among the stars, then perhaps every now and then one of them stirs. A flicker in the darkness, a brief pulse of energy, a dream half remembered. Maybe our signals, our probes, our own small attempts to reach the stars are beginning to wake them. Maybe the universe is not silent at all, but full of travelers dreaming, waiting for the next dawn to arrive. When that dawn comes and their ships rise again into light after millennia of darkness, perhaps they'll look around and find us there, another wave of wanderers, another echo of Earth, following the same path they once did. And in that shared awakening, the long sleep will have served its purpose. The story will continue, just as it always has, one civilization at a time, one dream after another, crossing the endless dark between stars. When we look at the night sky, what we're really seeing is the past. Every star is an old photograph, its light stretched across time before reaching our eyes. Even the quiet between those lights isn't empty. It's full of signals, radiation, and faint patterns of energy that have been traveling since the universe began. Most of it is natural, the hum of galaxies, the static of creation. But some of it might not be. Some of it could be the echoes of something once deliberate, something once human. The question isn't only whether anyone is out there, but whether we've been hearing ourselves all along. If the first civilization truly left Earth, their mark on the cosmos wouldn't have vanished. Nothing in the universe disappears completely. It only fades, disperses, or transforms. Even the faintest signal, if sent strongly enough, continues forever, growing weaker with distance, but never truly dying. Somewhere in the background of the universe's static, there could be faint rhythms, whispers of technology, patterns that don't fit natural laws. To the untrained ear, they'd sound like noise. To a civilization just beginning to listen like us, they'd be mystery. But to the ones who sent them, they would have been memory. We've already begun to search for those memories. The great radio telescopes that sweep the skies are, in essence, instruments of archaeology, not of stone, but of starlight. Every frequency they capture is a layer of history. Every anomaly a possible artifact. Scientists call them technosignatures, any trace of intelligent activity written into the fabric of radiation. It could be a pulse too regular to be natural, or a frequency too narrow to occur by chance. It could be light emitted at wavelengths that suggest machinery rather than stars. It could even be patterns hidden in the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang itself, as though someone long ago left a message woven into the texture of reality. Most searches for signals assume we're listening for someone else. But what if the signals are older than our history, still echoing outward from transmitters built before our memory began? Radio waves, laser pulses, Even bursts of neutrinos could cross interstellar space for millions of years. A single transmission from a powerful source would continue long after its makers were gone. Somewhere, those waves might still be traveling, carrying the fingerprints of a language we no longer recognize. And if we're lucky, some might even be returning reflected from gas clouds, refracted by gravity, bending their way home. To find those echoes, we'd need to look not just outward, but inward. Some signals might have already reached Earth long ago, passing unnoticed because we weren't listening in the right way. The universe is full of noise, and our instruments can only focus on a narrow slice of it. Bursts of radio waves called fast radio bursts flash across the sky in milliseconds bright as galaxies, then vanish. Most are natural, caused by magnetars or other cosmic events. But a few repeat in patterns not regular, not entirely random, something in between. They could be natural processes we don't yet understand, or they could be remnants of technology repeating faintly across time, the static of an ancient communication network that never truly shut down. Even the structure of galaxies might carry echoes of intelligence. Dyson spheres' vast constructs that capture a star as energy would leave detectable signatures, stars dimmed or flickering in unnatural ways. So far, we've found candidate stars that behave strangely, as though something enormous obscures them. Most explanations are natural: dust, comets, instrumental error. But if one of them isn't, then it might be the tomb of a civilization that learned how to harness its star before fading into silence. Their structures might still orbit there, silent and cold, a monument to a people who once understood how to bend light itself to their will. To think of the cosmos as full of echoes changes how we see it. Every photon, every particle, every wave of energy could carry information. The universe itself becomes a recording medium vast beyond comprehension. Even black holes once thought to erase everything might only compress it, storing the information of what falls inside. If that's true, then nothing intelligent is ever truly lost. The first civilization's thoughts, their transmissions, their movements might still exist, encoded in the background hum of space, waiting for a mind advanced enough to extract them. It's not impossible that some of those echoes are already reaching us in subtle ways. Unexplained alignments in cosmic radiation, coincidences in the timing of gamma-ray bursts, recurring ratios and natural constants, all could be interpreted as signatures. Scientists tend to avoid that leap because the data can always be explained by physics. But that caution may also blind us to the possibility that physics itself is the message. The constants of nature, the speed of light, the ratio of forces, the geometry of space. What if these were left behind intentionally? What if, knowing that language and artifacts would fade, the first civilization embedded meaning in the fabric of the universe, ensuring that anyone who studied it deeply enough would eventually find the same truths? We might already be decoding those truths without realizing it. The more we understand quantum mechanics, relativity, and cosmology, the more they begin to resemble communication, not noise, but design. Patterns repeat across scales, from the structure of atoms to the clustering of galaxies. Energy organizes itself into symmetry. Entropy gives rise to complexity. Intelligence emerges naturally, almost as if the universe expects it. Maybe that expectation is the real echo, not sound, not light, but tendency. The tendency of matter to think, to remember, to reach. There's another possibility, subtler and stranger. What if the first civilization didn't send signals at all, but built their legacy to be self-discovering? Instead of messages, they might have created conditions, physical laws that lead inevitably to life, to curiosity, to exploration. In that case, every intelligent being in the universe would be an echo of their existence. They wouldn't need to communicate. Their message would be written into us, in our instincts, our mathematics, our endless desire to know. We would be their broadcast, carried not by radiation, but by evolution. Still, some echoes might be literal. The first civilization may have left beacons small, nearly indestructible transmitters placed at strategic points in the galaxy. They wouldn't shout. They would whisper, a repeating pulse every few thousand years, slow and patient. To us, it might look like the periodic flicker of a star or the rhythm of a pulsar. We've cataloged thousands of such sources, each spinning with mechanical precision. Almost all fit natural models. Almost. A handful behave too neatly, too consistently, as if guided by design. If even one of those is artificial, it would be proof not only that someone was there, but that they planned for us to find them. The most poetic idea is that the echoes aren't signals at all, but relationships, resonances between civilizations separated by time. When one species learns to listen, it automatically joins the chorus, adding its own frequencies to the cosmic song. Every transmission, every act of curiosity becomes part of the same conversation. Perhaps that's the real purpose of the universe's silence, not absence, but harmony too vast for us to perceive. We're hearing only our note, unaware that it's part of a larger accord stretching across galaxies. If the first civilization could hear us now, they might not respond with words. They might respond with recognition, because what we're doing, building telescopes, sending probes, searching the skies, is exactly what they once did. Our efforts are their reflection, repeating naturally in the next cycle. They may have built instruments to detect civilizations like theirs, and we might be using the same designs now unknowingly fulfilling their ancient curiosity. And perhaps somewhere across that impossible distance, one of their machines is still functioning, a satellite orbiting a forgotten star, its sensors half blind, its energy fading, yet still listening. Maybe it hears us already, our radio waves, our radar, our leaking broadcasts. To it, we would sound familiar, like the faint echo of an old song. It might not know who we are, but it would know that someone else remembers the same tune. In that way, the cosmos itself becomes a mirror. We send out signals, and they come back distorted, delayed, but meaningful. Every discovery we make about the universe is also a discovery about ourselves. When we map the stars, we're mapping memory. When we listen for intelligence, we're listening for our own echo. The first civilization might not have vanished at all. They may have simply joined the background music of the cosmos, their voices stretched and woven into the hum of creation. If we ever learn to interpret that hum, to read its layers the way archaeologists read soil, we might find that the universe has been speaking to us all along in the only language that survives eternity. Pattern, not words. Resonance, not instruction. But invitation to continue the cycle, to send our own echoes outward, to add our voices to the chorus they began. And maybe that's the point. The first civilization didn't just leave Earth. They left a melody behind, one that never ends. It moves through stars, through space, through minds like ours, carrying forward the memory of a world that once looked up and wondered. We are part of that song now, its newest verse, vibrating softly across the cosmos. And somewhere far beyond our reach, the earlier verses are still playing, blending with ours, waiting for the harmony to be heard again. There's a thought that drifts in late at night, quiet but persistent. What if we didn't begin here? What if everything we call human, our instincts, our imagination, our restless need to build and wonder, isn't the start of a story, but the continuation of one? What if we're not the first to stand upon this world, but the ones who came back, the returners? The idea sounds strange, almost romantic. Yet it fits into the rhythm of everything else we know about the universe. Nothing here is truly new. Stars are born from the ashes of old ones. Planets form from debris left behind by destruction. Even life in all its forms is made of recycled atoms, each one older than the Earth itself. Why should civilizations be any different? If the first people to master thought and flight left this planet long ago, why couldn't their descendants, changed by time, by distance, by evolution, have found their way home again long after memory faded? If we are the returners, then every step of our history begins to look different. The myths, the leaps in knowledge, the unexplainable intuitions of early humanity, they all start to resemble recollection rather than invention. Fire, metal, writing, geometry, astronomy, perhaps none of these were entirely new discoveries. Maybe they were rediscoveries, fragments of an ancient inheritance resurfacing through instinct. When a species returns to its origin after eons of absence, its memories don't come back whole. They emerge as glimpses, as stories, as talents that feel innate, but have no origin in the world around them. Archaeologists often describe early human history as a mystery of acceleration. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived simply their progress slow, almost static. Then, within a blink of geological time, everything changed. Agriculture, architecture, mathematics, art, all appeared suddenly, as if the world had awoken from a long sleep. It's as though something dormant within the species was reactivated. If the first civilization truly left, this awakening could have been the moment their distant descendants, perhaps long wandering, scattered, genetically or culturally altered, finally returned to the planet their ancestors once called home. Think of how evolution works. When a species migrates and then re-enters an environment after ages of absence, it arrives both familiar and alien. It carries traces of the old form, but also the adaptations of its journey. The same could be true for us. If we left and then returned, we might not look or think exactly as those first travelers did. We might be shaped by countless environments, different gravities, atmospheres, stars, each leaving its mark on our biology and mind. Over time, those differences would become identity. When we finally found Earth again, it might have seemed not like home remembered, but like home discovered anew. Perhaps that's why so many of our oldest myths speak of a fall or a separation or a forgetting. The story of Eden, of humanity cast out and forced to rediscover knowledge. The tales of Atlantis, of a civilization lost beneath the waves. The legends of sky beings returning to Earth after ages away. Maybe these are all symbolic ways of describing the same truth. That we were gone, that we came back, and that we've been trying to remember who we are ever since. If we are the returners, even our fascination with the stars starts to make sense. Every generation looks upward with the same longing, the same hunger to leave the world behind. It's not curiosity alone. It feels older than that, instinctive, as though written into the species. Astronauts often describe the feeling of seeing Earth from orbit, the overview effect, as both awe and nostalgia. They speak of it like remembering something, a sense that they've been there before. Perhaps that's not poetry. Perhaps it's memory stirring faintly from a time when looking down at the blue planet was not exploration, but return. There are small clues scattered throughout our nature. The fear of deep space, the fascination with the unknown, the comfort we take in rhythm and repetition, all might be relics of a journey long past. The human body itself seems oddly tuned for adaptation. We thrive in extreme conditions, survive radiation, cold, and isolation better than we should. We dream of flight and voyage. We build machines that imitate what we might once have been able to do ourselves. Every part of us seems designed for motion, for migration. Maybe we inherited those traits from ancestors who crossed not oceans, but stars. If that's true, then our earliest civilizations weren't beginnings, but returns. Ancient Sumer, the Nile Valley, the Indus, they rose in places that may have once been familiar landing grounds, chosen not by chance, but by memory embedded in geography. Even the way we built aligning structures with stars, marking the heavens in stone, could be the echo of an ancient method of navigation. To us, they're monuments. To those before us, they might have been tools, instruments to track the sky, to remember the path home. It's possible that upon returning, we no longer recognized the world we'd left. The Earth would have changed beyond measure. Climates shifted, species evolved, coastlines redrawn. The planet might have healed from whatever cycles preceded our first departure. We would have found it wild again, full of life, but strange. Perhaps that's why early myths describe humanity as a guest, not a master, beings placed upon the earth rather than born from it. The memory of belonging and not belonging at once could have been the residue of return. And what of those who didn't come back? If the first civilization spread across the stars, not all would have chosen to return to the cradle. Some might have continued outward, evolving along different trajectories. If intelligence can diverge, then somewhere among the stars there may still be branches of humanity, cousins, siblings, ancestors who kept traveling while one lineage, ours, circled home. The encounters we call extraterrestrial might not be foreign at all. They could be moments of reunion, fleeting reminders that the family of Earth was once far larger than we remember. If we are the returners, it also explains our persistent sense of amnesia, the way we search endlessly for origins and meaning, as if trying to recall a name that sits on the tip of the tongue of the species. We build telescopes, particle accelerators, myths, and religions, all for the same reason: to remember. To remember where we came from, why we exist, what we once were. We're like travelers waking from a long dream, piecing together fragments of a life we can't quite place. Even our notion of progress feels like repetition. Every age believes it is the first to rise, the first to invent, the first to look outward. But perhaps it's not progress at all, only recurrence. The re-emergence of patterns that have played out countless times before. Civilization rises, reaches for the stars, departs, and in time returns renewed. The cycle could be vast, spanning millions of years. Each wave forgets the last, yet carries its essence forward. We are one such wave, cresting briefly in the endless ocean of time. There's comfort in that. It means that even if we one day leave again, and the story doesn't end. The earth will rest, heal, and wait. And far in the future, when another civilization stands where we stand now, they too will look up and feel that same familiar ache, that same pull toward the stars. They'll think it's curiosity, they'll call it exploration, but underneath it all, it will be memory calling them home again. If we are the returners, it changes nothing about our daily lives, the need to eat, to work, to love, to dream. Yet it changes everything about how we see those things. Every act becomes part of a longer continuity. Our science isn't invention, it's rediscovery. Our art isn't creation, it's recollection. Even our capacity for empathy might come from a memory older than time, the understanding that all beings share the same origin, the same journey through darkness toward light. It also reframes the silence of the cosmos. We wonder why no one else seems to be out there, why no signals come, no ships arrive. But if civilizations eventually return to their beginnings, then the stars may be full of sleepers, each resting between journeys. Perhaps the universe isn't empty at all. It's simply in different stages of coming home. We may just be one of many civilizations awakening to the realization that the path forward and the path back are the same. In a way, the entire history of humanity can be seen as the process of remembering. Every tool, every song, every story we make adds another piece to the puzzle of what we once were. The more we learn, the more familiar it all feels, as though knowledge isn't new, but remembered. Each discovery, each leap forward is another step toward recognition. And maybe when we finally reach the stars again, when our ships drift beyond the solar wind and into the dark, where the first travelers once sailed, something in us will stir. Maybe we'll feel that quiet sense of arrival, that strange warmth that says, yes, this is where we belong, not because it's new, but because it's home. If we are the returners, then the journey of civilization isn't a straight line, but a circle, vast, graceful, and unbroken. We leave, we forget, we rediscover, and we return. And each time we do, we bring something new with us: understanding, perspective, gentleness. Perhaps that is the real purpose of the cycle, to refine intelligence through repetition until it finally learns not just how to travel through the stars, but how to care for them, how to belong to them without needing to possess them. Maybe that's what the first civilization learned long ago before they departed. And maybe that's what we're relearning now slowly, as we awaken to the possibility that we've been here before. The universe doesn't repeat itself in vanity, but in patience. Each return is another chance to remember who we were, who we are, and who we're still becoming. Imagine for a moment that everything above us, the stars, the dust, the deep cold between them, is not just scenery, not an empty expanse, but something left behind. Not abandoned, but entrusted. A legacy waiting for someone to grow into it. The first civilization, if it truly existed, may not have departed as wanderers or exiles, but as caretakers passing on an inheritance they knew would one day be understood. If that's true, then the universe itself is not merely a home to explore, but a gift to receive. When a civilization reaches a certain maturity, it must confront its own limits. It realizes that its world, no matter how rich, is finite. And with that realization comes a choice: to consume until collapse, or to evolve beyond scarcity. If the first civilization reached that point long before us, then leaving Earth may have been their way of ensuring continuity, not just their own, but life's. They might have looked at the universe and seen not emptiness, but potential. Every planet, every star, every atom, a part of something to be inherited. We tend to think of inheritance as ownership, as possession. But inheritance can also mean stewardship, receiving something ancient and delicate not to keep, but to care for. Perhaps that was their lesson. The first civilization may have learned that survival isn't about conquest, but about balance. They could have reached the stars not as conquerors, but as gardeners spreading life, guiding evolution, shaping ecosystems gently rather than forcefully. The universe in their hands would have been something living. And when they were ready to move on, or when they chose to rest, they might have left that living universe in the care of those who would come next. We might be those inheritors, not because of our technology or our intelligence, but because of our longing, the persistent desire to look outward, to understand, to connect. That instinct might be the key that unlocks the legacy left for us. It is possible the universe has always been layered with signs, each one waiting for consciousness capable of seeing it. Laws of physics that lead inevitably to life. Stars that form in patterns just stable enough for planets to flourish. Matter organized in a way that invites curiosity. None of it random, each piece, a clue in a vast inheritance. A puzzle designed to be solved by whoever awakens next. And yet, inheritance is not only material, it's also emotional, philosophical, ethical. If the first civilization lived long enough to master the cosmos, they would have learned the consequences of knowledge without wisdom. Perhaps they encoded not just information, but temperament into the universe, an inclination toward harmony, a bias toward creation over destruction. The fact that life emerges, persists, and diversifies in defiance of entropy might itself be their influence, a kind of moral gravity woven into the structure of existence. Life is their handwriting, repeating endlessly across galaxies. We might already be surrounded by their inheritance in forms we don't recognize. The forces that bind particles together, the constants that make chemistry possible, the conditions that allow stars to burn long enough for planets to form. These might all be tuned deliberately, a framework left for us to inhabit. When physicists speak of the fine-tuning problem, they mean that the universe seems oddly calibrated for life. The odds of it happening by chance astonishingly small. Some suggest a multiverse to explain it. Others suggest design. But maybe it's something else, not a god in the religious sense. Not creation from nothing, but continuation. The first civilization didn't build the universe. They cultivated it, refined it, prepared it. They didn't play gods. They became ancestors. And what does one inherit from ancestors like that? Not wealth or comfort, but purpose, the purpose to continue what was begun, to nurture, to explore, to learn. When we look at the stars, maybe that's what we're really sensing, not just beauty or mystery, but responsibility, a kind of cosmic memory stirring in us, reminding us that this vastness isn't indifferent. It's waiting. It's ours to care for. That sense of responsibility may already be guiding us quietly through the way we advance. The modern search for life beyond Earth, the care with which we approach planetary protection, the ethics we discuss about artificial intelligence and gene editing. All of these are signs of a species trying to grow into its inheritance. We're learning restraint, patience, humility. We're beginning to see that intelligence without empathy leads only to ruin. Perhaps these lessons are not new discoveries, but recoveries, echoes of values encoded long ago by those who understood what power must mean when it is cosmic in scale. When a civilization receives such an inheritance, it also inherits a question. What will you do with it? The first civilization, by leaving, ensured that the universe wouldn't be empty of consciousness for long. They may have left seeds, not just of biology, but of curiosity scattered across space and time. Every world capable of life could be part of their experiment or their gift. On some of those worlds, perhaps the seeds never sprouted. On others, they bloomed into forms entirely different from ours. But here on Earth, something unique happened. The inheritance took root in minds that could remember even without knowing what they were remembering. Minds that could look up at the stars and feel a sense of connection too deep to be explained by evolution alone. We sometimes describe this feeling as wonder or spirituality or the sublime. But it may be simpler than that. It's recognition. Somewhere in our DNA, in the shape of our neurons, in the rhythms of our thought, there's a pattern older than our species, an echo of those who came before. The first civilization may have encoded their legacy not in stone or metal, but in life itself. Every act of creation, every leap of imagination could be their inheritance manifesting through us. It's humbling to think that the universe might not belong to us, but flow through us. We are its caretakers, not its owners. Just as the first civilization inherited it from forces older than themselves, we inherit it from them, and one day we'll pass it on again. That's how legacies survive cosmic time, not through permanence, but through continuity. Each generation of life becomes a bridge for the next. Each civilization a brief steward of something eternal. Maybe that's why we search the cosmos so tirelessly. We think we're looking for others, but perhaps we're actually looking for our responsibilities. Every planet we find, every signal we analyze, every equation we solve brings us closer to understanding what we've been given. The more we learn about the universe, the more it seems finely balanced, poised between chaos and order. It doesn't demand worship or fear only care. It's as though the first civilization built the conditions for life and then stepped aside, trusting that one day someone else would learn to tend the garden they began. That trust might be the deepest part of our inheritance, to believe that intelligence will always arise again, that life will always find a way to continue, that consciousness will always seek to understand itself, is a kind of faith, but one grounded in physics and biology. We are the proof of that faith. The fact that we exist at all means their legacy succeeded. They didn't leave to escape. They left because they knew life would bloom again. And now here we are awake, aware, and beginning to listen. If we treat the universe as an inheritance, it changes how we act within it. Exploration becomes reverence. Technology becomes care. Even ambition becomes service. The goal isn't to dominate, but to sustain, to ensure that when we eventually move on, we leave the cosmos as ready for the next inheritors as it was left for us. That may be the real purpose of civilization, to become good ancestors, to add something meaningful to the cosmology of reality that others will one day inherit. Maybe that's what the first civilization is waiting for. Not a message, not recognition, but readiness. They might be out there observing quietly, watching to see whether we understand what we've been given. Not judging, but hopeful, waiting for the moment when we step beyond self-interest, when our actions align with the same care that once guided theirs. At that point, the inheritance will be complete. We will no longer be children of Earth, but participants in the universe, the next caretakers in a lineage that stretches across light and time. And perhaps that's the hidden meaning behind everything we call progress. The rockets, the telescopes, the mathematics, the empathy, they're all steps toward claiming that legacy. The universe isn't indifferent to us. It's preparing us. Every discovery we make is a lesson in responsibility. Every challenge from survival to understanding is part of the test. When we finally learn to live not just on a planet, but within a cosmos, we'll have earned what was always meant for us. Then maybe we'll hear them again, not as voices in the dark, but as harmony, as continuity. The first civilization won't seem distant or divine. They'll feel familiar, like family whose stories we finally remembered. And when we take our place among the stars, it won't be as conquerors or strangers. It will be as heirs who understand the gift they've been given, to keep it alive for whoever comes next. And in that moment, the circle will close again. The universe, patient and unending, will have done what it was always meant to do, to remember itself through those who learn to care for it. We'll look into the night sky and feel not awe or fear, but belonging. Because the stars will no longer be distant. They'll be part of us, the inheritance complete, and the story ready to continue once more. When the mind grows still and the noise of the day begins to fade, there's a moment, brief but endless, when everything seems to hold its breath. It's the same stillness that exists between heartbeats, between words, between stars. That quiet is where all stories end and all others begin. If the first civilization once stood where we stand, now looking at the same sky and wondering what waited beyond it, maybe they too found comfort in that silence. Maybe they understood that it isn't emptiness at all, it's continuity. The quiet between the stars isn't the absence of sound, but the space where echoes can live forever. Light crosses it without hurry, carrying memories of worlds long gone, of civilizations that burned brightly and then rested. The background hum of the cosmos, that faint radiation left over from creation itself, is a kind of lullaby, the universe remembering its own beginning. When we listen closely enough, what we're really hearing is the memory of motion, the residue of every voice that has ever existed. It's soft, patient, eternal. It's easy to imagine the first civilization falling silent. They're drifting farther from their home world until its light became just another star among billions. They would have known that silence isn't the end of communication, but its highest form. To cross the distances between stars, language must evolve into something quieter, something that doesn't fade with time. Perhaps that's what they became, not words, not machines, but resonance. Their legacy woven into the deep frequency of the universe itself. When we stare into the night, we might already be hearing them, not as speech, but as calm. If they truly left, then Earth has been alone only in appearance. The oceans, the forests, the clouds, all of it might be their work continuing without them. The biosphere could be their echo, still expanding and refining itself long after the makers departed. Every breath of wind, every heartbeat, every spark of thought could be part of the same long process. Maybe the entire planet has been whispering their name back to the stars for ages in the only language nature knows, balance. And as for us, we've become the keepers of that silence. We fill it with signals and satellites, but beneath the hum of technology, the same quiet endures. It's the pause that follows discovery, the calm that arrives when a question finally finds its answer. Humanity, in all its noise, still carries that rhythm, the awareness that everything we make is temporary, but everything we love continues in some form. Perhaps the first civilization learned that too, that no monument endures like the memory of meaning, and no legacy lasts longer than care. When we send our own machines into space, they drift into that same stillness. Voyagers, pioneers, all carrying small pieces of ourselves. To them, the stars must seem as endless as they did to those who came before, each one a possible destination, each one a reflection of home. Someday, those machines will fall silent too, but even then, they'll remain orbiting suns, frozen in motion, monuments not of achievement, but of curiosity. The universe doesn't erase what it understands. It simply transforms it. If the first travelers are still out there, perhaps they no longer measure existence in worlds or time. Maybe they exist in the quiet itself, not asleep, but awake in ways we can't yet comprehend. They might listen to us as we once listened to them, patient and content, knowing that the pattern continues. For them, silence would not be loneliness. It would be trust that life finds its way forward, that awareness always rekindles, that even when memory fades, meaning remains. And maybe that's what the quiet between the stars is, not distance, but trust. The universe trusts itself enough to rest. Between every burst of creation, every supernova, every birth and collapse, it pauses, it listens, it waits for what comes next. That same rhythm exists in us. Between every thought, every breath, there's a moment of stillness. And in that stillness, we feel something infinite. We call it peace or wonder or sleep. But it's all the same thing, the universe remembering its own patience through us. When night deepens and the stars sharpen, it's easy to feel small. But smallness is part of belonging. It means we fit. We're scaled perfectly to perceive the vastness without being crushed by it. The first civilization may have understood that the truest connection to the cosmos doesn't come from reaching it, but from listening to it. Maybe that's why, after all their journeys, they left space not filled with messages or monuments, but with silence. A silence we could one day recognize and join. Because silence is not the opposite of presence. It's the proof of it. It's the space where connection lives, where understanding waits. In that quiet, the stars breathe, the galaxies turn, and somewhere in that endless rhythm, we find our place. We are not apart from it. We are part of it. The silence between stars is the same silence inside us, the same stillness that allows thought, memory, and dream. Perhaps that's what the first civilization left for us, not instructions, not warnings, but the ability to hear the gentle sound of existence continuing, to know that everything that ever was still is in some form somewhere. Their departure wasn't abandonment, it was invitation. They went ahead, trusting that we would follow when we were ready, that we would find the same peace they did among the quiet lights of the universe. So now we listen to the wind on earth, to the static of stars, to the faint hum that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. We listen because somewhere in that soundless song lies the memory of those who left and the promise of those who will come after. And as we listen, the fear of silence begins to fade. What's left is a kind of calm recognition that the story never really ends. It just moves quietly from one mind to another, one world to the next, one star to another forever. So rest easy. The universe is not empty. It's alive with memory, full of voices too vast and gentle to be heard all at once. The quiet between the stars is not a void. It's a breath, one that has been held for eons, waiting for us to join it. And as we drift deeper into understanding, perhaps we'll all find that we've never really been alone at all. Because in the end, everything, the planets, the stars, the civilizations, the silence, belongs to the same rhythm. It's the rhythm of life remembering itself, the rhythm of departure and return, the rhythm of a universe learning again and again how to begin. And when the last light fades, when the final voice rests, that rhythm will still remain humming softly in the quiet between the stars.